Yauno, Diri, Mukaro, Aguibana, Boriken, Taino, Daka. Greetings, relatives. My name is Roberto Borrero. I'm a Boriken Taino. I represent the United Confederation of Taino people, and I have the honor to be serving as the moderator for today's IITC webinar, Protecting and Restoring Our Traditional Food and Ecosystems, Practical Knowledge Sharing with Indigenous Peoples. This is session two, Protecting and Saving Seeds. I'm just going to repeat that introduction very quickly in Spanish, and then I will just go over the Zoom instructions. Bienvenidos a todos. Me llamo Roberto Múcaro Borrero. Soy del pueblo taíno, representante de la Confederación Unida del Pueblo Taíno, y tengo el honor para servir como moderador del webinario de City hoy, protección y restauración de nuestros alimentos y ecosistemas tradicionales, intercambio de conocimientos con los pueblos indígenas. El segundo sesión, proteger y guardar nuestras semillas. Voy a compartir algunas instrucciones para la función de interpretación de Zoom, primero en inglés y después en español. Okay, so I'm going to revert now back to English, and I will just go over the Zoom interpretation. I just want to make sure that I can get that up on the screen. I'm going to do a screen share. Should be seeing my screen now. So what you have here is just a quick instructions. The first thing you want to do is locate the interpretation icon. It's on the bottom right of your screen. You'll see a little globe there. You want to click on that. Once you click on that, you want to select English and then mute original audio. The instructions are also in the chat in case you don't get all this, but it's really important that you mute the original audio. You'll see here the image, select English and then mute original audio. That's important because if you don't, you'll get both languages, the interpretation and the speaker at the same time. And also throughout the session, you can send questions to me, the moderator, in the chat. Just type them out in chat and we'll share those with the speakers. Right now, I'm going to just share these same instructions very quickly in Spanish, and then we'll go right into our speakers. Ok, ahora voy a compartir la función de interpretación de la plataforma de Zoom. Primero, localice el icono de interpretación, está en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla. Aquí es una imagen, puede ver el globito. Abajo de eso dice interpretación. Seleccione ahí interpretación, después seleccione español o Spanish. Aquí es una imagen, tú puedes ver la palabra Spanish. Seleccione eso y después de eso necesito apagar el audio original. Entonces seleccione Mute Original Audio en inglés. Quiere decir apaga el audio original y esto es muy importante porque si no vas a escuchar los dos idiomas al mismo vez. Si tienes algunas preguntas, comentarios, puedes usar el icono de chat. También está al bajo de su pantalla. Y ahora voy a volver en inglés porque tenemos interpretación. Gracias por su paciencia. Or I'm going to stop the screen share and we're going to go back and get ready for our first speaker. Our first speaker is Nicole Llanas. She's going to be doing the introduction for today's program. She's Opata. She's the IITC Food Sovereignty Program consultant, and she's calling in from Arizona. So I think from Arizona. You'll let me know if I'm wrong. But you have the floor, Nicole. Great to see you.
Gracias, hermano. Thank you, Roberto. Good to see you and good to be here with these amazing folks and seed knowledge keepers, gardeners, farmers, knowledge holders. Good morning. My name is Nicole Llanes. I am Opata, and I'm currently calling in from Nogales, Arizona. My people's lands are from Sonora and what's now known as Sonora in Arizona. I am the Food Sovereignty Program consultant for IITC, and food sovereignty is one of IITC's core program areas. Some of the work that IITC does in this program is building solidarity with Indigenous producers and organizations, international advocacy and work at the United Nations and other international arenas. Some of the work that is done there is to protect our cultural heritage and to uphold our rights, including what is known as Article 31 in the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. I recommend that you read that Article 31 and the whole declaration. That's something that as we come into IITC, we should already know about. But if we don't, then we need to memorize it. It's important. Other work that IITC does along those lines is repatriation, or what is now known as rematriation of seeds. There's so many institutions, including nonprofit organizations, museums, universities, that have taken seeds from Indigenous people or have been the caretakers for the last few years of these seeds. But as Indigenous peoples, we are more than equipped to be able to take care of these seeds, and we have been welcoming a lot of the seed relatives back home in many different communities. And the other line of work is networking with other food producers and their organizations. So if you want to know more about IITC's food sovereignty work, go to our website, iitc.org. And the last webinar series was about how COVID-19 impacted our food systems and our communities. But this series I'm so excited about because it's practical knowledge on the importance of getting to know, the sharing, exchanging information about seed keeping, including germination. How do we choose varieties? How do we adapt them? A lot of this information is not written in textbooks. It has been passed down orally. A lot of this information is not taught in public schools. And so that's why this webinar series is so important, because we get to share with each other knowledge that even though we all come from different cultural backgrounds and ways of life, there's similarities. And there's also our ancestors have been sharing information for so long in seeds and trading, and we're doing that right now. We're doing that right now during this series. So even though it's using technology, I'm very grateful that we get an opportunity to continue to exchange. And I hope that this sharing of information and stories inspires all of you and rekindles that hope that we carry and that the seeds offer to us as we start planting this next season. I know I'm getting ready to plant. I'm securing the garden from all the javelinas and wildlife because they did eat the garden last year. So I'm so excited to be planting and to listen to all of these amazing speakers have to share. Chris Honani, Diné Hopi from IITC, Chasity, Salvador from Acoma, Pueblo, Stephen McComber, who I deeply admire, Mohawk traditional seed keeper, Panfilo Hernandez, who has been doing tremendous work in his community and around Mexico for so many years. And of course, our moderator, Roberto Borrero, who has been a moderator in a lot of this series. And so to end, we honor our ancestors and our elders as we continue to pass this knowledge to more and more people. And something that Wendell Berry once said is, we exploit what we merely value, but we defend what we love. And so may we carry that spirit in the work that we do this season. And as we share the stories, may the stories that all of our presenters share today make you fall more in love with our seed and food relatives, and may you defend what you love. With that, I will pass it back to you, Roberto. Thank you for having me today.
Nicole, for those opening words. I enjoyed them, especially you highlighting the importance of the United Nations Declaration on the rights of Indigenous people. I have shared the links for that declaration in English and Spanish in the chat. So if folks want to click on that and download the declaration so that you can study it at another time, you're more than welcome to do that again. If you have questions or comments, please share them in the chat. So we want to get right into our speakers. And our first speaker for today is Chris Honani. He's Diné and Hopi. He's the IITC Administrative and Programs Assistant, and he's calling in from Arizona. And if you don't know, he does a lot of the work, the lion's share of the work getting the tech going for these webinars. So we're always appreciative of his work there. But he's also very knowledgeable in seeds and farming, and so we're very happy to have him here. Chris, when you're ready, you have the floor.
Hello, good morning, everybody.
Yeah.
Bene.
Buenos días a todos.
I believe the interpreter is on the Spanish or English channel. Sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah. This is our second webinar of our third series, and we're kind of shaking off the cobwebs from the last time we had a webinar. So I apologize if there's a couple technical difficulties, but I'll make sure to be on top of them. But anyway, my name again is Chris Honani. My Hopi name is Lomokuiva. Translates to nicely growing tobacco plant, which is my godparents' tobacco clan. So hello to any of my relatives that may be watching today. I am the admin and program assistant with the International Indian Treaty Council. I have been working with the Treaty Council for over a year now. But my background in farming and seed saving is what led me to become involved with the Treaty Council. And that started last year, actually 2 years ago in 2019. The International Indigenous Peoples Corn Conference was held in Tlaxcala, Mexico. And that was one of my first international trips to learn about seeds. And before I had taken that trip, most of my knowledge was based in Hopi, in Navajo agriculture practices that I learned since I was a little kid. And the focus of the series this time around, as Nicole had mentioned earlier, is practical knowledge. And thinking back about what I know, I realized that I do have a good amount of practical knowledge. And I feel that it's my duty, my responsibility to pass this knowledge on to anyone who may be looking to grow their own foods, to restore their traditional seeds, to create healthier food systems for their people. And so today, what I want to talk about mainly is the practical knowledge, and not so much of the philosophical knowledge of saving seeds, because I believe a lot of people watching today are Indigenous peoples. I think we have some sort of basic understanding as to why it's important for us to save these seeds. And so the focus for my presentation, and I'll try to do this as timely as possible, is to focus on the knowledge that you can use in your everyday lives. And so I'm going to begin with sharing a few slides, pictures here, and just kind of talking about some of the seeds that I've been working with, and kind of what my knowledge is as to how to take care of these seeds. If you feel that some of the knowledge that I'm sharing may be different from what please feel free to add your comments, your thoughts into the chat. Because my background obviously is from the Hopi Nation, and so out there we plant an entirely different way compared to most people across the world. And so my knowledge is specific to that region. So I'll try and share the pictures here now. And so I'll get started on talking about seeds here. Okay. All right, let's see here. We're getting this started. All right, first off, this is what I want to start off with here. Let me see if I can get the slideshow started so you don't see everything else. Okay, there we go. All right. So first off here, white corn, Hopi white corn, used for many different purposes, mainly flour, used to make our homa, our cornmeal to pray with. And this type of corn here can usually last in storage for up to around 4 years or so. And what I'm going to mention a little bit later is kind of the proper techniques of how to store your corn. And so this corn here, as you can see, oh, I changed it, sorry. Let me go back. Is left out to dry for about 2 weeks. As my grandmother had taught me, once it is harvested from the field, it's stacked onto old mattress springs. I mean, we recycle as many supplies and tools as possible. And so we use old mattress springs to actually use those as drying racks. You can easily build your own. There's scrap metal, you know, all over the place, and lumber. You know, it's not that hard to make a drying rack, but as you see there, it's stacked in a pretty way there. Those are my grandmothers who had stacked that. So I always look back at this picture and always, you know, think about the amount of times that my grandparents have done this, you know, and they have passed that knowledge on to me, and so I'm thankful to be able to share that with you all today. So speaking of my grandmother, and my aunt actually is here in the corner. My grandmother is here on my paternal side. You know, a process of going through the corn, and taking off the husks, and getting it ready to dry. So this is just after we pulled the corn from the field. You know, we don't use any machines. We don't use, you know, any sort of mechanized equipment really, besides maybe a tractor or a tiller to prepare the fields and to plow the fields. But for the most part, everything is done by hand. And I think that's probably one of the healthiest ways to work with seeds is using your hands. You know, don't rely on machines to do as well of a job as human hands can do. So, you know, this is what we do, and it's a bonding experience as well. You know, when you're sitting around a pile of corn like this, you know, you're talking, you're laughing, sharing stories, but at the same time, you're doing this good work to sustain our lives for future generations. And so, as you see here, the blue corn, which is, you know, used by many different indigenous peoples, and it's one of our core crops as Hopi people. Here it is after it is husked. Is the corn here. You know, again, just like the white corn, we'll let this dry for a couple weeks. But you always want to make sure, you know, you're paying attention to the weather as well, because sometimes there could be a rain that comes in, and you know, that you don't want moisture when you're drying your seeds or when you're saving your seeds. You know, moisture is what's going to set you back. So when it comes to actually saving the seeds and storing them, you want to, you know, store your seeds in a cool, dark, dry area, preferably in a jar or some sort of airtight, watertight container. After the process of drying, you want to get as much moisture out of these seeds as possible so that you don't run into any germination problems in the future. Let's go to the next picture here. Okay, beans are, you know, I'm kind of just talking about the three main, what is referred to as the three sisters: corn, beans, and squash. Trying to keep it simple here, straight to the point. But our beans here, the way that we will process our beans is, well, actually, these are our lima beans, Hopi lima beans. And what we do is we'll pull up the whole plant itself from the root, and we'll load it into a back of a truck and take it home and unload it, and we'll let this dry until the pods, as you see here, start to turn that nice brown color, and there's a nice crispiness to that outer pod. And usually this will also take a couple weeks as well to dry, because once you pull the plants from the field itself, there will be some moisture. So you just have to make sure to keep an eye on your seeds and to make sure that they'll dry properly. Here's my mother here processing seeds. I like to take pictures when we're doing these things just to document it, just to show people that I'm not lying about what I know and my experiences. My mother is also a very good seed caretaker as well. So when we're processing those beans, we're pulling them off of the stalk, and the dry ones we'll put to the side, and the ones that still might need a little bit more time, we'll put it in a different bucket and let those dry for another few days or so. And sometimes when you're going through your beans, when you're going through any of your seeds, sometimes you'll find some seeds that will kind of just surprise you. These ones here, we didn't plant any sort of purple beans. And for some reason, I found these in one of our plants. And so, you always want to pay attention to your seeds and what's coming out of your field. And sometimes, you'll find old varieties growing within your own seed stock, and you won't even really know until you go through your seeds and process them. And these purple seeds are really interesting to me. I have them saved. I want to plant them sometime soon. Purple, it's like a Hopi purple string bean or something like that. I'm not too sure. If any of you know, go ahead and put it down in the comments if that reminds you of anything there. But I really like the color of these, and as well as these here, speckled tepary beans. I have some background in working at the San Javier Co-op farm down here in near Tucson, Arizona. And to the O'odham people, tepary beans are one of the staple crops. And I always was fascinated by looking at these tepary beans and their beautiful pattern on them, speckled tepary beans here. And if you know about tepary beans, you'll know that they're one of the most drought tolerant varieties of any sort of seed, really. And so that's also something that's very important of saving seeds, is that we're saving a technology that has been adapted over the years. And here's a tray of some chilies that I grew 2 years ago. I collected some chili seeds from Mexico and from across the country, and I didn't really know what anything was going to look like until I planted it, just to experiment on how chilies grow and what sorts of varieties there are. And as you can see, chilies come in all different shapes and sizes, but the seed itself usually tends to stay the same shape and size. And chilies, if you ever want to save chili seeds, you want to try to save as many as possible, because many times people run into the issue of thinking that their seeds aren't good, because chilies take quite a while to germinate. And usually it takes several weeks for them to germinate. So you really have to be patient when you're planting your chili seeds. This is actually a picture I took in India last year, right before the pandemic began. I was invited to a learning exchange in southern India, and I was walking around a community, and I, seen chilies there. So I had to take a picture. People have very similar methods of preserving and saving their seeds. And so this just goes to show that across the other side of the world, people are doing very similar things, and it's what works for us. So we have to continue to do these things, because you know, this is what's gonna keep us alive in the future, not only physically, but spiritually and mentally as Indigenous people. So I think that will all wrap up for now. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next speaker. So thank you for listening to me. And I can go on and on and on about seeds. So it's kind of hard for me to end here, but the show must go on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really enjoyed the photos, some beautiful seeds there. And I also like that you highlighted that kind of the intergenerational process that happens when you are working the fields and working with your family. I think that's really important. I think there was a comment about that in the chat, how that working together also is a way to pass around knowledge, pass knowledge on through the speaking with family members while you're doing that gardening. Also love those purple beans, man. They look really great. But let's move on right now. Thanks again, Chris, to our next speaker, Chasity Salvador. She's from Acoma, Pueblo. She's a traditional seed caretaker and a young farmer and gardener. And she's calling in from New Mexico. Chasity, when you're ready, please unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Hello, can you all hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, awesome. So Goatsi helpa hi everybody, I'm Chasity Salvador. I'm from the Pueblo of Acoma. My name is Ushrachko Chinanako, which means sun corn maiden. And I actually have the corn maiden here with me, the white corn. She grounds me a lot because I'm really nervous right now. So I'm holding her and thinking about you know, what is guiding me in this work and guiding all of us in this work. And I hope to be able to translate the knowledge that I know that I've learned from really incredible mentors, farmers, gardeners, one including my father, who's taught me a lot of what I know. And I owe so much of my knowledge to him. So yeah, I think with that, I'll just get started. I'm gonna show some photos and I'm going to talk over those photos. Let's see, I gotta share my screen. Let's see, let me pull this. Oops. Cool, can you all see that? Awesome. Okay, so like I said, I've learned a lot from my dad. This is my dad here. He's harvesting some, we planted some Acoma melons this past season, as well as some Hopi red watermelon. And he's teaching me when to harvest them. So thinking about how the taste of the watermelon or the melon, it's gonna be really nice and sweet when it's hollow, and you can like knock on the melon and you can hear your knock on there. So that is one of the things that he taught me this past season. I'm going to start at the beginning. So this is the beginning. So I came to doing some of the seed work, the seed sovereignty work, similar to Chris. I did some traveling and some learning, and visited different Indigenous communities and Indigenous nations, and really realized the ongoing colonization of over our people, over our lands, our waters, you know, through the different means of the extractive industry, you know, oil, drilling and mining and building of dams, and also seeing the ongoing colonization through the youth crisis, you know, the mental health youth crisis, the food crisis, the housing crisis, and seeing that a lot of those, I call it like a matrix of colonization that we're up against as Indigenous people, they manifest in really large ways and small ways, and they look different in our various communities. They're all there still, and thinking about, you know, what is it that I can do as a young person, someone who, you know, has been learning this knowledge of agriculture and farming and seed saving from people in my family, from my dad, and from my grandparents, from my grandma, my grandmother, and thinking about, one of the ways is food sovereignty through this what we're sharing today, and thinking about the longevity and the sustainability of our food systems is through our seeds, and thinking that, or knowing or understanding that our food sovereignty can only exist if our seed sovereignty is very strong. So yeah, that's how I got into this work. And when the pandemic hit, I was given this opportunity to start doing the work, or putting, what do they call it? Putting your money where your mouth is, or doing what you talk about. And so I decided to do a garden by seed. So thinking about how much seed I would be able to harvest by what I'm planting, and also thinking about, so I had like a vegetable garden, and then I also had, the fields in the Pueblo, there's a certain way that they're set up. And so when we were planting the field and the garden, I was really thinking about how much seed we would get from the produce. And so that's one of the practical, I guess, knowledges that I could share, is just thinking about when you are planting. For us, we start to think about that now in March, and going into March and April, thinking about what we are planting and who we're planting for, how much food we want to produce, but also how much seed will come with that. And so, yeah, that's one of the practical knowledges that I could share. Oh, that is amaranth seed that I cleaned and winnowed. It's a really long process. And as Chris was sharing, we do a lot of the work with recycled materials. There is a lot of stuff you can buy to do a lot of mass or large production seed cleaning and storing, but I just used a window screen. I used anything that I could find around the house, the wind. I used a fan to clean the seeds. And just learning about, I was really in this mindset of thinking how our ancestors did this work, right? Without a lot of material things, they just did it. And so that's the mindset that I was in. And also with that, thinking about the scale. So I really wanted to do this work for myself, and feeling how, or recognizing how it feels to do seed work for myself, like how much labor it takes, how much time it takes, how it feels in my body, in my mind, in my spirit. And so I really did like a low scale thinking of how I can teach these practical knowledges to the young people that I work with, to my family members who are curious about this work. This is an Acoma red watermelon seed that I cleaned the other day. And yeah, so what else can I share practically? Oh, you want to think about one of the things that I sort of created during this time of the pandemic was my seed home. So thinking about where seeds like to be happy, where they like to be warm, where they like to be cared for, as if they were our children, right? Because they hold the stories of the past, present, and the future, and the histories of, like I mentioned, the colonization and the conquest of our people, and also the resistance to those, to the colonizations. And so really caring about them in a way that, fosters their storytelling, fosters their beauty, really. So yeah, so thinking about a seed home, I think I've learned that seeds like to be, like Chris said, in colder temperatures, stored in a colder temperature home. And here's me doing some work with the cooked white corn. So yeah, so in my seed saving, I was really thinking about, okay, how much can I really store in the little like places that I exist. And also thinking too about when I was planting and planning out how much I wanted to grow, I was thinking about the farmers who gave me, or who have given me, a lot of knowledge in my community. And like I said, that's my dad and my grandfather. Thinking about what kind of seed that they would want for the next season and the next season and the next season. So thinking about being in this reciprocal mindset. I think of the seeds as, or we're taught that the seeds are the gifts of the creator or gifts of creation. And, being able to give the gift of creation to other people is what the seeds are all about. And they just show that they're tenfold, they're 1,000-fold, they just continue to grow. And so that's another thing that I can share is when you are planning out your garden or your field is to think about, what seeds are needed in the community for the next season, or within your own family, and what foods are needed as well. So let's see. Oh, I started with this photo. That's my dad. This is me with the amaranth, which was one of my main focuses this past season, in terms of seed. I just realized her abundance and, wanted to share or reintroduce this seed to our community. And so also please tell me when I am running out of time. And so, yeah, really focusing on, I was able to do some seed travels to Guatemala, and we learned a lot about the amaranth seed and how much she has taught the community and brought the community together after, experiencing violence from colonization. And so I really wanted to honor that story and think about that a lot while I was planting the seed. And it was just a beautiful teacher for me. And yeah, I have the seed and I've been giving it to community members in Acoma and whoever else is asking for it. So it's very special to me. This is me with the blue corn. Let's see, this past season, I did everything by hand, again, thinking about how our ancestors did it. So I shucked a lot of the blue corn by hand, just to feel how it feels, and stored it, cleaned it, and stored it as best as I could, just within my community who would appreciate the seed or who would want to grow Acoma seeds in Acoma. So yeah. This is the amaranth seed after I cleaned it and winnowed it. It was, yeah, like I said, 1,000-fold. So that was a really beautiful project for me. This is the blue corn seed, the Acoma blue corn seed. So this is about 1/4 of what we grew in the field this past season. And so I think one of the practical ways that I was thinking about this work is really sitting with how the idea that our seeds and our foods and our care for each other in our communities was our first economy. Those were our first currencies. And, before the idea of $1 was introduced, that's how we showed our love. That's how we showed our relationship with each other and our kinship with each other. So really thinking about how do we reintroduce those ways of being with our seeds. So thinking about taking care of them while they take care of us. And then that allows us to take care of each other, community member to community member. So these seeds are a labor of love and for the community. This is just to show pictures of the field that we work in, or the field in Acoma. Our field. This is me also in the field. This is the garden. Like I said, I had a vegetable garden and did my best to learn as much as I can to save those vegetable seeds, because as we saw in the pandemic, that when the pandemic hit, there was a huge request for seeds. There was a lot of requests for traditional or heirloom seeds, but there was also requests for vegetable seeds. And just seeing how, in New Mexico, we are a dry state, but there is so many abundance of foods in our state or among our communities. So really thinking about, how could I start right now my own seed garden to share those seeds. So yeah, I think with that, I will just end with saying that there's so many ways that you can go about seed sovereignty, seed work. You could go the protection route. I think that the resistance that we're seeing now is our Indigenous people, our Pueblo people are really speaking out against, the biotech, the big pharmaceutical corporations who are introducing GMO seeds or who are bringing GMO seeds and advocating for that, which is a direct attack on our seeds. And if we think of our seeds as ourselves, our children, then that's a direct attack on who we are. And so, yeah, you could go that route. The route that I really love learning about in this time is seeing how we reintroduce the idea of our relationship with each other to our relatives south of our made up border, the relationship that we have to other Pueblo people, other Pueblo communities through our traditional trade routes of seed, through our trade economy, and just really, like Chris was sharing, really learning while we're processing the seeds and talking to each other and being with each other in this work. And the last thing that I will share is, like I mentioned, I come from a agricultural community that is so beautiful and powerful. And the current, I guess, research that I'm under is really learning from those farmers, from those gardeners, those mentors in my community, not only the people, but also the ways in which the ditch system works, the ways in which the waterways work, the ways in which, you know, the soil is talking to us on how to be. And I think for me, that learning has really reinforced the values that we're taught and that we embody as Pueblo people, which are, you know, all about patience and respect and love. And the seeds teach you that. They really humble you, and they really teach you how to do those, how to live into those values. And so those are many ways you can go with seed work. And I love to talk about it, and I love to be in community with young people and share that knowledge with them, because they love it too. So yeah, I think with that, I'll just end there. Thank you all for being here with me, though. I hope you all have a good day.
Thank you so much, Chasity. I really enjoyed your presentation, and you said you were a little nervous, but you did great. We really got a lot of information from you, and you shared some beautiful photos. I really liked that little practical knowledge about knocking on that melon. I know as a gardener myself, I practiced that too for the taste of the melon, that hollow knock. And also, you know, you and Chris, you know, really brought up this question about, you know, asking yourselves, what can we do as young people? And I think that that's a great message. It's an inspirational message for so many of us. I know in my own community in Boriquén, when you know, we're urging people to go back to what we call in our language conucos, or our gardens, that we're seeing more youth coming into it. It's not a tidal wave yet, but we are seeing more youth who are getting involved. And so it's so inspirational to hear what you had to share, and that you're walking your talk, right? And okay, so I want to thank you for that. Oh, and also the other message that you and Chris both shared was that importance of recycling. I think that's a really good practical knowledge sharing for all of us. So I want to get right to our next speaker. We have two speakers left, and please remember that we'll have time for questions for all of our panelists right after the presentations, and you can just share those comments and questions in the chat, and we'll move right on to that. But right now, I want to introduce our next panelist, Stephen McComber. McComber. I hope I pronounced that right. But he's a Mohawk. He's a traditional seed saver and keeper of Iroquois traditional seeds. He's in Mohawk territory in Quebec, Canada. So, Stephen, thank you for being here. You have the floor. Just have to unmute, Steve.
Okay.
Yep. Oh, you had it. No, try again. See if I can. There you
Hello?
Go. Yes.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay. What kunharado sa hagwego? E wagatsununi sa kato ne nua unisarade si anjatororge. Welcome everyone. I'm very happy to be here in the circle today with you all to discuss about some of the practices of the Haudenosaunee people. I am myself of the Mohawk Nation and the Bear Clan. And from my house, a couple miles across the river, is the city of Montreal. So this just gives you an idea about where I live and the location. And we're actually probably living in the most northern point in our territory of the Iroquois people or the Six Nations. And also because we are a corn-based society, this is kind of the furthest north that corn can be grown at, and successfully. And we live in kind of a microclimate, so we are actually zone 5, but with an A on it. And my growing season is the middle of May to mid-September. But due to circumstances in climate change, which we're all facing, things are beginning to change. I spoke with an elder this summer that I used to grow a lot of corn with at one time. We grew lots of corn over the years. And he said to me, he says, Steve, he says, our seasons are beginning to change. And I see that myself. But where I want to start very quickly, because we have a time limit and I'm going to try to get in as much as I can. And I can tend to go on forever myself. But I know as part of sharing with our people, it begins we follow an agricultural cycle and calendar. And it's symbolized by this, the turtle or turtle rattle. And on there are 13 plates. The plates represent the number of moons. And along the side of the turtle that you can see here, there are 28. That denotes the number of days in a lunar month. So this is how it begins. So, and as our tradition says that our people, our origins started from the sky world, which came through the stars, which we call Onaguadala. And so part of our culture is that when they rise in the east, in the fall, that's the time we begin harvesting our crops and our corn. And so the way we do our corn, and it's also part of our seed selection. So what we do as we're harvesting our corn, we look at all the seed that we have, and as we're going along, we select, or we put to the side what we look and believe as the finest looking seed from what we grew that season. And from there, we go on to make a braided chain. And that's how we preserve it, and we hang it up. Today, we hang it in the barn. Old people used to have a corn crib, and so on. So it needs to dry. It needs to stay cool. Basically, we have 2 types of corn that we grow here. We grow a flour type of corn, and we also grow flint corns. And the difference is with them that it's more in our territory or in our area of part of North America, which we consider part of New England, that flint corns grow the best. And the reason I say that is because what happens in the fall, it tends to rain a lot and it tends to be quite moist and that. And so a flint corn will actually repel the moisture. And whereas a flour type of corn will absorb that moisture, and often the corn will get bad. And when it begins to rain, as you know, most of our corns start to mature like at 100-day mark, or to 110 to 120 days. So once the corn is come to its point of growing, that's it. It's going to stop. And if it starts raining and raining and raining, the plant is not going to start regrowing. It's going to absorb that water, and it's going to make the corn get bad. And I remember many, many years ago, I spoke with one of the elders, and who lives in a different community at Six Nations, which is about 400 miles west of here and a little bit south. And I had asked him, we used to call him Uncle Sam because that's what his name was. And then as part of our ways, our elders in our communities, if you're not directly related, they are our uncles, the male. The females are our aunties. And that's out of respect And so then our grandmothers are our immediate family members. And so what I asked them, so I said, well, you know, I said, you have a longer growing season. This is why do you plant, he plants a short corn. And I have one here. This is a short corn. So in our language, it's called Diné, which means, you see here, it's round on the end. It means the nose is stuffed. And at the same time, this is a medicine corn. And what they do is that it's used for when the mind is lost or the mind is traveling. An example is like when someone is grieving. And I remember one time I was braiding this corn, and these old ladies, older women, were here visiting us, helping us do a ceremony. And I was braiding this corn, and one of the older women said to me, she said, I had to use that corn when my husband died. And so I understood very well what she meant, and she explained to me how we prepare it. So this is also, it's just, at the same time, it's a medicine corn. So when I asked him, and that's what he said to me, it's because in the fall, but the thing is with the flint corn, it doesn't do that. And both can be made with it. We clean our corn by using wood ashes and to remove the hull, and then we go on to rinse it and then cook it up again to make soup, or pound it to make flour. And so we still maintain a lot of these type of growing practice and knowledges. And in our language, it's called Ghana, meaning the seed, and it goes back to the creation story of our world. And in there, in the springtime, and one thing that's always very important is that it's a spiritual part or spiritual connection that we have to our corns that a lot of non-native people don't have or are not familiar with, and they don't do. But as being a person brought up in my culture in the Longhouse, I've learned a lot from my elders. And now today I'm sitting here. I guess I'm one of the elders, but I'm carrying the words of those who taught me these things. And I learned a lot when I was smaller from my grandmother and my grandfather, and that's the way I learned to plant and everything. And so when I was a teenager, I traveled for a while with the White Roots of Peace, and then I traveled with a gentleman. His name was Philip Deere, a medicine man from Oklahoma. And I also met Thomas Peñaca on a few occasions, and it was always about the corn and the relationship to that, and to Honzage, meaning our mother, the earth, and that we've always maintained these things. And over the years, visiting interacting with different communities of the Haudenosaunee, visiting the elders, because that's what I was accustomed to do. And where we live in this part of the country, a lot of our fathers and grandfathers worked on the high steel construction. All those big major buildings in New York City, including the late World Trade Center, were built by the Mohawks of Kahnawake and Akwesasne and Six Nations. And they also worked on these places. And so that's part of our heritage, but we always maintain our cultural connection. So even when they were working away, they've always did these things. And there was an older gentleman who used to work around Detroit, and it's a kind of a custom here in our community that they make a cornbread, and they used to serve it on Sunday. And I think the reason they did that is that because the people became Christian at one point, and to them, keeping the cornbread was like their sacred or holy food. So we had it served on Sunday. So when I was a boy, that's what we ate. And to today, a lot of people don't follow the church, but they still eat cornbread on Sunday, as now I guess it's become a tradition or a custom, whatever the word is. And so we still do that. But there are things that we have to look towards. What's most important is today is what the changing in the weather and so on. The length of the day is very important. Now, I've been to many conferences and I spoke in a lot of different places and on different things and different subjects related to seeds. So one of the things is we should understand about corn Honeste. So this is a beautiful corn that I brought back with me in the springtime. Just before the COVID started, I was invited to Mexico, to a community for their corn ceremony. And when I was there, I was so amazed. The women were dancing like this with their feet going like that. And I said, wow. So I was also invited to speak, and they had an interpreter for me. And that's the first thing I talked about, the women, their feet like this. And here our women dance the same way, like this, shuffling their feet. And that's what it's called in our language. It's called asida, meaning the feet, or garanye. It's grinding the feet into the soil. It represents that the women are covering the sacred seeds of life, which is the corn, with their feet, because their connection in our culture is from our grandmother, the moon, our mother, the earth, the women, and the seed. So in our culture, the seed is female. The male aspect is the sun. And so we maintain all of these things, and we keep it in a ceremonial cycle, so beginning and ending at the midwinter ceremony. And this is when that group of stars becomes directly north above us. That's the time that we mark the beginning and the finish of the year. And then as it begins to go this way, and then by the time we're going to plant, they're going to be directly in the west. So that's how we follow. And so what's important about the corn, and yes, this is such beautiful corn, but the thing is, where you live makes a difference. There's not only dry land farming, and it's beautiful to hear these stories, but what I want to share about it is that our corns have been adapted to where we live, and our people didn't get here overnight. Our people moved from the south over a millennium, and as they moved their villages over time, the corn adapted to the length of the day. So the further north you go, the longer the day is. Because if you go where I am here and you go to the north, it's daylight right around the clock up north, but you can't grow corn there. So where we are is the most northern edge of the corn belt, I guess you would call it. And so, but even corn from the south, even Arizona, doesn't grow well here. What it will do is it grow like 20 feet in the air, and it'll wait to about sometime in September when the day begins to get shortened, because it matches the time that it would naturally grow in Arizona. And so what happens there, then it begins to tassel. And if it makes, then you've changed the length on the day. But if it doesn't make it, which a lot of times it doesn't, so the corn has to move gradually to get to this point in the adaptation of the length of the day. And so that's what's referred to as day length issues. The other issue is not really in the sense is land race issue, meaning what's adapted to your area and the things that you grow. And it's important to stay in tune with this. But what's just as important is the different growing practices that we have. So I've heard different people have different ideas and beliefs that they learned from their parents and their grandmothers and so on. That's beautiful. The way I was taught is we take the corn like this and we hold it on the bottom, like so. And so now from here to the top is what I would use to plant. And first of all, we look in the fall when we're selecting, we look at the length of the ears, depending on the variety. We look at how wide the corn is, the size of the kernels. That's what we do in selection. And that's what we plant. I know some other people will go right down to the tip of the nose. That's fine. But corn will follow and grow what the parent looks like. So by selecting your seed, which we started in the fall. So this past fall, as part of the COVID last year, I was involved in a community project here in Ganawagi it was called the Three Sisters Mound Garden, after the old-fashioned way of planting in a mound, which we did. We did by a ceremony. I burned tobacco, the women sang, we sang traditional songs, then we planted. I used a a planting stick that I had made. And then this is where we began, and we followed the moon cycle. In the beginning, the older people, we asked, they would always say, well, we plant by the moon, or why the moon? But what part of the moon? They didn't always have that remember. And the reason for that is because a lot of our parents and grandparents were taken away as children and put in residential school. So a lot of those things was missing. So for a while, I used to use Blue Moon of Kentucky, keep on shining, and that didn't work. And then after that, I was into Ozzy Osbourne and Bark at the Moon. But then I finally found a grandmother at Six Nation who explained to me. And so that's the way I began to learn. And so in the last couple of years, I've been teaching people planting by the moon phases, which I follow. And so when we planted this big garden this summer, this is how we planted by the moon phases. So in the half moon, or it's called wax on part of the moon, that's where we planted. And so this is what our corn looks like. And so this is Tuscarora corn, where the seed came from my dear friends at Tuscarora, near Niagara Falls or Sanborn, New York, and from the Rickard family. And the longest cobs we have here were 22 inches, and many of them at 20 and 18 inches. And after they dry down, they can go up to about 14 inches. So this is a beautiful corn, and it's kind of the longest in the season that we have, but it made. And by selecting the corn and keeping good seed, and I think everybody could agree that this is very nice looking corn. And so that's maintaining some traditional practices. And along with that, yes, we grow a variety of beans, yes, and we have a purple bean too. Everybody has purple. I love the color purple, not only Prince, but this purple beans in there. And then squash. We have a lot of different type of squash, and it's very important to intercrop all these things. But to understand, we also had a lot of challenges. We have raccoon problems, we have bird problems, we have striped cucumber beetles, we have everything you can think of. So everything that's going on is a challenge, and we have to use all our collective knowledge together through all our communities, from every community through our Turtle Island and our Mother, the Earth, from the East Coast and state of Maine with the Penobscot, all the way to British Columbia with the Haida people, to the Southwest, the Hopi, the Navajo, all the Pueblos, and to our brothers in Mexico. We are all interconnected by the seed and our feet, which the women represent in the dance, covering the seeds of life with their feet. And these are things. But there are also been challenges with seed companies trying to put patents on our seed and putting claims on it. And this year, just recently, I've been, because I've always done that, spend my time, go to see the seed stores, garden centers. And here we're still under the COVID. And so there's a lot of restrictions in the province of Quebec. And there's a curfew here. And some of the stores were just open last week since Christmas. They were just essentials, but seed was considered non-essential. I don't know why, but that's what they did. Anyways, a lot of the seeds or seed that seed companies put out there, looking at these things, and to tell you, I've been doing this like for 40 years, everywhere I go, about seeds. And even the seeds that are there, they're getting to be very little and fewer of the varieties and so on. And that's another thing that's called market driven. Somebody else is in control of our destiny, of the food that we plant. So think about that. If we go to Walmart and buy our seed, they control what we're going to plant, because if that seed isn't there, we're not going to grow, and we have to eat whatever. But anyways, I think everybody kind of has that. So we need to look at this. And there was one thing that I know I'm running out of time, very important. When I was in Iowa a couple of years ago, and there was a gentleman that went to that, where you have all the seed frozen under the ground and so on. Okay, in a way, maybe that's good, but in a way, it's not. For in my opinion, it's because it doesn't acquire the genetic memory of the growing season. So what happened some years, like here, we had no rain for 61 days in the spring, and we had high temperatures, 80s, 90s, and the hundreds. Then we had 6 weeks of rain after that, which it brought on the smut. So we had to learn to deal with that, and so on. And so those are all things that we learn, and all that knowledge that we apply in the wisdom, and we carry forth the best that we can. And for me, our seed bank has to be a living thing, because I'm alive, you're alive, and the knowledge that we carry was the knowledge of our grandmothers, our grandfathers, and it's still alive. It's carried on through us, and I'm so proud. My grandsons, they're in the garden, my granddaughters in the garden, and they're learning, and that's the way I learned. I learned when I was a boy, and I'm still doing these things. But it's important. And I remember I collect old seed garden catalogs. I have one in the early 1900s, and it's a gentleman. His name was Henry Field, and the guy was a corn expert. And one of the things that I read in there not long ago, because a friend of mine out in Michigan wanted to know about a variety, so I looked in the catalog from the 1907, and this corn was in there. So I took a picture, I sent it to him. But while I was reading more, Henry Field suggested to people that they should concentrate on varieties that grow well where they live. I mean, I wish I could grow these beautiful corns from Mexico, but it's going to take a long time, and it might not make it. And when we're looking at the amount of time that we have in our season, if you can, sure, as a project. But if you're looking at food and food security, two things or the most important thing is securing a good quality seed and be in control and take ownership and distribute that. And in part of our ceremonies in the spring, we have a big planting ceremony, like a lot of Indigenous people communities have. And in there, the people bring seeds and they put it there, and they play a game. They play a bowl game that originates at the creation of our world story. And in there, the grandmother Moon played against the right-handed twin, this bowl game. And so we still do this. So we play, symbolizing that we have the men play against the women, and they put seeds in there, and whoever wins, all the seeds are distributed. So I was thinking about that. Well, there's our seed exchange.
Stephen?
Yes, I'll stop now.
Yes. Speaking of exchange, thank you so much for that presentation. There was so much great knowledge. We do have one more speaker. It was a really amazing program. I want to leave some time for some questions at the end, but I really appreciate everything that you shared, especially starting out with making that connection with climate change and also those spiritual connections as well. So right now, I want to introduce our final speaker, Panfilo Hernandez Ortiz. He's Nahuatl. He's a member of the Vicente Guerrero group from Tlaxcala, Mexico. Panfilo, you have the floor. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to share this with the youth that are here. And I believe that Chris has been here to my community, Vicente Guerrero. 2 years ago, he was here. And we continue to work on defending and caring for our corn. And Rebecca was here too, Nicole as well. Came to Vicente Guerrero, and we celebrated a festival here when they came. And if you'll just let me know when my time is up, so that we can all share this knowledge that all of you have mentioned. And it's really a pleasure for me to share this with the youth, and how you are connected to corn, how you feel about seeds, how you understand, and how you are able to select the seeds, and also to be proud of the achievements, including Stephen, how you're proud. It's being proud. This is something that I'm really happy to say that this is mine. I'm going to try to share my screen with you, to share with you some things that I've learned at this time. Now, you do see my screen?
Yes. See,
Okay, let's begin. As was mentioned, I'm from a campesino organization called the Vicente Guerrero Holistic Rural Development Project. We are a group of campesinos who work in agriculture. We've been working in agriculture for 40 years. I have been a member of this organization for 30 years. I've been learning with the indigenous people and the campesinos of Tlaxcala for over 20 years about corn and how to grow corn, how to defend our corn. And so to begin with, we need to talk a little bit about what corn is. This is a very representative slide for me that shows our native seeds. The native seeds the names have been changed over the years. In Spanish, sometimes they're called the criollo seeds or the original seeds. That's what we call it in Spanish, the criollo seeds, because they have been adapted over time. But without getting too much into the semantics, sometimes we talk about, well, are they native or are they Creole seeds? But it's important to point out that there are seeds that indigenous peoples have been developing and improving for over 10,000 years. And we see here throughout the Americas was the center of origin of the domestication of so many varieties of plants in the world. And I'll talk about three important varieties: corn, wheat, and rice. We have created corn in these domestication areas, as you see here in blue, the primary diversification areas in red, and the secondary diversification areas in yellow. When we talk about diversification, we're talking about the different plants that we have seen over the life of this plant. I want to explain the meaning of the state of Tlaxcala, my community. Tlaxcala comes from the Nahuatl language, from the word Tlaxcalan, which means the place of the cornbread or the place of the corn tortillas. I have been growing for 10 years. And just like Stephen and our youth who have been speaking today, I also want to share my corn. This is the corn that we grow, these different varieties, these different colors. This white one is the one I normally grow. And then also I grow this kind. I have been growing these for about 10 years. And this is something to conserve. You conserve and you save the seeds to create the conditions to prevent the disappearance of this valuable product, this valuable seed that you all have been talking about. Here we see my state. It's a small state. But we have a lot of corn diversity in our state. And that is our true heritage, this diversity of the corn. We have all of these colors in my community and in the other indigenous communities, in the Nahuatl and the Otomi communities. So this is something we're proud of, that in Mexico we have around 59 to 60 breeds of corn. This is our heritage from the generations of campesinos and indigenous peoples who over the last 9 or 10,000 years have been caring for and protecting the corn. And we know that it's the women here in Mexico who created all of these varieties, all of these breeds of corn. These are our roots. These are the roots. All of these types of corn, these type are the ones that we have in Tlaxcala, of the 59 or 60 or so in Mexico. In Tlaxcala, we have 16. So that means we have about 20% of the corn varieties that exist in Mexico. And the main ones we use are these 9. In Spanish, the names are cónico, tlaqueño, tunicato, oajo, elotes cónicos, aguaxintle, yellow, red, the different types of corn. These are the varieties that the indigenous people and the campesinos know also by their own names or by their color. We have this corn. It's called the garlic corn. It's also called the white or creamy corn. It's also we have this dark color. We have the blood of Christ, sangre de Cristo corn. We have the black corn. We have the yellow. We have the red, and we have the cacahuacintle also. These are the names that I've been taught to distinguish between the different types of corn. As Stephen has explained, these growers, these campesinos and indigenous people are the best teachers, and they are the best seed breeders. They have been practicing seed breeding to continue to improve their crops, and I have been working with the campesinos for 20 years on this. And just as our young people here today have been explaining, we will learn much from all of this. My state produces a lot of corn. It's one of our main crops. Before NAFTA, the free trade agreement, we produced around 160,000 tons, and now this reduced, and now we have about, 120,000 hectares that we produce in Tlaxcala. Of that 120,000 hectares, the majority of are these types of varieties of corn, the native corn. And this is something very important that we have learned as indigenous people, is the importance of diversity in our produce. There are campesinos who live in cooler climates, and they also maintain their crop diversity. This is very important because when we have a greater diversity of our products, greater genetic diversity, we have better defenses against pests and other problems. This example of the cornfield, known as milpa in Spanish, I can't show you a photo of this. It's better to show this diagram, this traditional technique for growing. It's being lost in some communities, but this is the typical system that many of you know about, where we have corn, beans, and squash, as Chris talked about. They call the 3 sisters or the 4 sisters who live together. They help us by providing nutrients and feeding the soil. And this is our technique that we continue to use because it is so beneficial for us. And this is so important for the defense of our food sovereignty. All of this wealth of products you see here is produced within our system. The corn on the cob, the corn nibs or grains, and all of the different ways that we serve the corn. Here's an example of a squash that we have that's called chilacayote squash. It's a variety that is important to us, and we combine it with other things and other foods that we eat that include some insects and some other different types of plants that we eat. We do combine the insects in our cuisine. Here you see the grasshoppers known as chapulines. They don't cause, these are grasshoppers that do not harm our crops at all. There's other products and cuisine such as tlacoyos, and tortillas that we prepare from the food from our fields, and the women work on this. And this is something there, an example of our growth methods. It's very interesting to hear about those of you who grow in very dry, arid regions, and I congratulate you because I know that it's a very difficult job to do, to grow in arid regions. This is the way we do it. This is how we try to maintain our productive diversity. Corn, squash, corn, and fruit trees. And here you see in our cornfield, the corn mixed with the squash. And then here it's separated out. We have another crop of the beans and the corn on this side. This is something that we, as the Vicente Guerrero group, together with the campesino and indigenous peoples, have sought to defend. So this care and saving of our seeds for us as indigenous people is part of our food sovereignty. And we do this work also by holding meetings and forums to share information with campesinos, to share information with the urban dwellers as well. And there are professors and academics who also work with us to spread this word about what corn means for Mexico and what corn means for Tlaxcala. Also, Chris had the opportunity to join us at a corn festival, the Feria de Maíz, and this was something very important. As I explained, we come together to display our seeds and our products, and we also maintain our community and family relations. Communities and families also keep their own banks of seeds. These reserves of different varieties of corn are very important, especially for families who may not have much money. They have this reserve because it's very important. If any type of contingency occurs, if some climate or weather problems happen, they have this corn to use for the next seasons. Also, at these fairs, we share traditional food. In the urban regions, when we come to the cities and share this information with the urban dwellers to explain
Panfilo,
what corn is all about and how we use and consume the corn. So that we want to teach the city people that it is very important to conserve our corn. Another thing that we also do to save and maintain our corn varieties is through state and federal law, where we demand from the state and the federal government, we make our demands. This is a law made by the campesinos that our varieties of corn should not be touched by the multinational corporations so that they will not be displaced. And we share this information with consumers or with any other parties who are interested in the issue of saving our corn. And this is something that we've been very involved in. Do you know about this monster? I think many of you know this monster. And excuse me for putting it this way, but I think that we all know that this monster has been taking over not just our corn and our bean crops, but also our cotton and our soy. And so this is very important to us. How do we organize ourselves to take care of our own home, to conserve our corn? We must organize ourselves. That's how we do it. You know what the threats are to our food sovereignty. It is the hybrid varieties that there was a time I was not so opposed to, but now I see the harm. These are the companies, the multinational corporations that are threatening us. In one moment, I'm finished. I'm concluding. One moment, please. This is the end, and I just want to present these final conclusions. That we don't only defend our corn through legal means, we also have seed banks, we have forums and meetings, and these are important activities, but the legal action has also helped us quite a bit in Mexico. And so I want to share this with you to conclude that we say in Mexico, sin maíz no hay país. Without corn, we have no country. And so this defense of our corn is important for all of those of us who love and conserve our corn. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Panfilo, for that important presentation, and also ending it with these ways that you're also protecting and defending uh, your ancestral heritage, the corn, through this legislation. All of our speakers today were so passionate about their presentations, and we really enjoyed everything. And what we're going to do is ask each of the presenters if they might share some of their presentations with us so that we can upload them, or at least part of them, on the IITC website, so that others may be able to benefit a little bit more if you can. Chris will follow up with you on that. We don't really have the time for questions right now, but I just want to take a quick moment to thank um, Chris, Honani, who started out, Chasity, Stephen, and Panfilio for these excellent presentations. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. We just had a really animated chat going on, that people were really uh, taken by the presentations and thought they were all important. So you should also feel really good about the presentations, and I'm sure people will want to follow up with you uh, uh, individually at some point. So I would imagine they'll be looking out. You know, I just want to. Yes, there's a message from Saul Vicente Vasquez, who spoke about the importance of this panelist, and he also wanted to note that from the indigenous peoples, uh, food sovereignty. They're promoting this itinerant school of food sovereignty to offer workshops to all the agricultural production, etc. So thank you all again so much. And I want to let everybody know before you sign off that next Friday we will be continuing our series, and it'll be a little bit different. It's going to be talking about traditional fire management and prevention. So you might want to tune back for that. We'll have speakers from California, from Alaska, from Australia, and Canada to talk about traditional, again, fire management and prevention. You can find out this information, a little more information about this program at the IITC website. Just go and click on the events. And just so that you know, if you want to register for that program, you will also be able to see the other programs that will be coming up in this series. And if you register for one, you'll be able to register for all of them at that moment. So it's really great that we have that opportunity. And again, thank you to all our presenters, our knowledge sharers today. My name is Roberto Mucara Borrero. It was an honor for me to serve as moderator. Please tune back in with us next week. And let me just close out by saying thank you to our translators, Jimmy and Rebecca, for their assistance in making sure that our programs are open as much as possible. So with that, we want to close out. I say, Hahom ito no kena atia ono. Thank you, relatives, for being here with us on behalf of IITC.